afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate it. We got a lot of information to share with you today. We're going to start off with some introductions here. So I'm the sales director here at Consero, and typically I'm working with CEOs, CFOs, and founders of the businesses to help them evaluate their options from a finance and accounting perspective. But today really is more about Jay and Keel Digital. So Jay, if you wouldn't mind taking a couple of seconds to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Dave. I'm Jay Fischbach. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Keel Digital Solutions, as Dave said. Super quick background. I come to you with a degree in physical geography and chemistry, which is the clear path forward to a life in capital markets. I finished my undergrad, got into high net worth brokerage. On my first day, my partner said to me, "I'd like a portfolio management system." And I said, "Yeah, I can do that." Two questions. What's a portfolio and what's it manage? And truly, I knew nothing. 20 years later, graduate degree later, I was the chief operating officer of two Canadian banks. And in late 2020, left financial services to start a new company with my partner, which is the company is now Keel Digital Solutions.
Great. Thanks for that, Jay. Really appreciate that. Great background there. I love that story. So from an agenda perspective today, we're going to go through margins and reorganizing the business, then evolve with the changing climate. Then we'll shift over to how outsourcing with partners can help during these times, and then rapid growth, lessons and learnings, and key resources for success. And so Jay had mentioned he's currently with Keel Digital. Him and his partner, they started this, but Keel Digital delivers cutting-edge solutions, training, and diagnostic support tools for improved mental and physical outcomes. And there we go. And so just kind of, to kick things off today, wanted to start discussing margins and reorganizing the business. So with that, Jay is going to kick this off with a little background and a timeline of his experience and his time here as they started Keel Digital.
Great, thanks. So Keel started as a company called Vector Health Laboratories in Jan of 21. We acquired two companies. We acquired an Ontario lab license. I'm in Toronto, Ontario, and for those that know, there's 75 licenses in the province. 68 are owned or operated by the two largest labs in our country, Life Labs and Dynacare. We grabbed one of the others. The last license was issued in 1973. As soon as we acquired the lab license, we acquired a physical lab, which is the only salivary reference lab in the entire country, and we moved right into COVID. It was right during that sort of the height of COVID testing, and for those of you that remember, getting off flights and having to stay in COVID hotels, we were one of the companies that was involved in getting people out of that and doing all sorts of COVID testing for flight and travel. We grew in that year from 3 staff in a boardroom to about 70. Year one was unbelievable. We produced just over 8 million in revenue and 2 million in EBITDA. And I'd say we needed zero to start with. Literally, we took a tiny bit of money in from friends and family, but it was a $0 game right from the beginning, and we did pretty well. In late 21, and you'll see on the timeline, we knew that COVID was going to end, and we needed to transition the business. We were looking to acquire a couple of companies, and we landed on two. One was called Telehealth, and the other was called Get Ahead. So here we were at the end of 12 months. We had like 70 staff. We closed on 2 acquisitions. We had 2 LOIs. And really what 22 was about was reorganizing ourselves into 3 distinct lines of business. And really we tried to focus our efforts on the highest margin lines of business, which I think everyone should. And for us, those high margin business were the ones that also produced the most revenue. So by the end of 22, we had added about another 10 million in revenue, and another 2.3 million in EBITDA, and all 3 lines of businesses were up and operational. We had our lab, our telehealth business, and our mental health business.
Great. So obviously it's great that you saw COVID. You knew it was coming to an end at some point, and obviously the climate has been changing, environments are changing. So what did you do and how did you pivot the business?
Yeah, great question. to take you back quickly, at the beginning of Jan of 22, where we acquired Tulip Health, which was just an online telehealth platform, we had really begun talking with our other acquisition, Get Ahead. And this was the start of our pivot. So Tulip, while it was a small tuck-in and while we were closing the deal, we were really well on the way of closing Get Ahead, which is a big deal for us. By the end of March, we had a binding term sheet with them, and this is when we really started our pivot. Get Ahead was a huge component for us in that they had a digital one-way mirror. Now, for those, if any of us were sitting around a boardroom table today, none of us would want to be in the telehealth business. There are tons of companies today. It is a one-to-one business. It's very, very difficult to scale, and the margins are really, really thin. So the question was always, why did we buy it? We bought it because we thought we could scale telehealth. So what the one-way mirror allowed us to do was it allowed one MD to sit on top of a bunch of care providers, in this case it was physician's assistants, and deliver care in a much more scalable fashion. Just a quick piece on margins here. Every one-to-one visit at the time, and for those that remember, all doctors were doing virtually everything in terms of telemed. No doctors were going into their office very much, and those visits in Ontario, which is a single payer system, they would get about $40. So what we did was we would hire one doctor, we put 6 physicians assistants underneath, and the margins changed dramatically. In the one-to-one world, it was, we would earn $40, we pay that doctor typically around 80% to see patients, so $32. Your ad spend to acquire clients was in around the $4 to $5 range, which left $2 for G&A and really, really thin margins. Brutal. In the post-mirror implementation world, what we were seeing was we could generate almost $1,000 an hour in revenues with a net of almost $400. So it's a 40% margin rate. It was unbelievable, and that was one of the pieces that we used. Now, unfortunately, the second half of 22, the government changed funding rules, and that changed our business a little bit. Next slide. Great. So to quickly explain why we wanted the Get Ahead platform, I would take you back to the 21 Olympics, where the world saw Simone Biles put up her hand and say she was having a mental health issue. My partner and I were sitting around, we were coming up with ideas of how to pivot and where we could get the most margin out of our businesses. And we started talking to this team called Get Ahead. They were in the mental health training and service delivery business. And one thing we knew was that if we were to project forward in 5 to 10 years, we won't be saying, do you remember when mental health was a thing? It was right in our windshields, and we had an opportunity to take advantage of that. This company had already been approved for a provincial pilot with the government. They were about to close a contract with the government for about $1 million, and we made a deal with them to expedite that process, achieve much larger value and much larger margins. And really by February of 22, that's the point when I think we had really evolved, and we needed help.
Yeah, I mean, mental health definitely sort of the hot topic these days. A lot of people are talking about it. Super impressive. It seems like you had a lot going on, right? A lot of balls in the air at this point. So what did you do to manage the company and just keep things moving forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. To quickly recap, by mid 22, 16, 18 months in, we'd now acquired 4 companies. We had about 70 staff working for us. We were managing 28 locations for our COVID testing and some of our other locations. We had closed on a government contract to deliver something like 40,000 mental health sessions on this new platform that we had just acquired. We had a staffing plan for the rest of the year that was to bring on way too many people. And my CEO, like any good CEO, was just looking at the next deal. In my chair, I was struggling. And what I did, I looked 100% to outsource what I could. So, what did we do? And what did we outsource? We looked, our first biggest problem was HR. We were hiring people and we had tons of staff. and we didn't have the expertise in-house. We actually hired two firms. One was a recruiting firm in the technical space, and anyone that's trying to hire technical staff today, it is a challenge, unless you're getting all of those emails that are saying, we can do your dev for free or for very little, which everyone gets every day in your inbox. The other was a software solution to manage our HR problems. Really, that was from contracts to managing some of the legal aspects. So we brought two firms in for that. And I assigned one team member internally to just manage those vendors and manage the process. The next was a CFO. We absolutely needed one. Until this point, I was not only the chief operating officer of the company, I was also the CFO. And I'm not an accountant, and nor am I a CFO of any stature. And we look to bring someone on board. That person was a contractor, still hired and still working for us as a contractor, with a goal of obviously moving to some sort of full time, I think in 24. We also outsourced all of our web development. So we had great ideas. I think there was some really good thinking around what to do, how to market, where to market. We just didn't have the expertise in house. We paid for it and we outsourced that. We also outsourced actually an interesting thing. We outsourced some of the development to an Africa team that was really focused on AI. And I'd say one of the big learnings here for everyone is don't be scared to outsource some of these components. The way to manage for me was I managed through measured deliverables. I left some time in my day for firefighting, but mostly it was report back to me on what you're delivering, and all was good.
Yeah, I definitely get those emails in my inbox for sure for the dev work, and outsourcing absolutely can definitely prove to be a great business decision for you. It seems as though, you and Keel, you really have a handle on the multiple lines of business, the strategic objectives. If you just kind of start to look back and reflect upon your journey, what lessons have you learned, and what can you share with the group?
I think, focusing on the right priorities is key, especially in a startup. Even though we were now sort of 2 years in, and we're coming into the end of our third year, I think being focused is important. Any good CEO, they want to be left to come up with big ideas, big sales ideas, come up with a strategy and push us. Our CEO pushes us to very uncomfortable spaces. My role as the chief operating officer of the group, I hold that umbrella up and talk about strategy to folks, but really shield the CEO from day to day. I'd say throughout 22, we worked on a myriad of skunkwork projects to better manage telehealth. And, the CEO pushed us here to try all new things, invoke AI, solve our staffing issues. It was a huge challenge. And frankly, I think we lost focus from the second half of 22, and that has refocused us in 23. And lost focus, it was 4 or 5 months of work where you get that outsourcing piece set up, where you get the reporting all done. I think by the end of 22, what we had done was we shut down one line of business. We looked at where the margins were, where our best vendors were, and we just focused our efforts on 2 main lines of business that were driving our highest revenues and our highest margins. So as I said, the late half of 22, we closed our telehealth business. We realized that it was just never going to make us money, and with that we also in early 23 we had to terminate about 35 staff from our telehealth business. But in place of that, we hired throughout 23. We've hired about 20 or 22 developers, which is one almost every 10 or 12 days. And for me, it was 23 was all about the right priorities. And I'd say as we get into the end of this year, I think our focus has definitely shifted in the right direction, and we're all pulling forward. On the next slide, thanks. So just as a recap of where we are today, we've through consistent management, absolutely consistent measurement. The executive, we've hired a new team member almost per week. We've spent tons of money on our ad campaigns for mental health solutions. We spend time lobbying really hard with our U.S. government agencies and Canadian agencies for addiction counseling, certifying bodies, peer support groups. We've expanded our offering across both countries, in Canada and the U.S. And my personal reflection, as we reflect back on this journey, we've now completed almost year 3. We're almost at 31 million in revenue. We've achieved almost 6 million in EBITDA. We've hired over 100 team members. We have future funding in terms of contracts for another 50 million bucks, and we've expanded. I think we're currently engaged, for any of those VCs out there. We are currently engaged in our largest acquisition to date, and love to talk to you about what that might look like. And we are very, very excited about our future and the future in mental health and what we can provide for that business line.
Yeah. Great stuff, Jay. Thanks again. And again, just very impressive during these challenging times that we were on over the last couple of years, taking advantage of the market. So congratulations to you and all the accomplishments there at Keel. Again, just sort of looking back, what would you say are the 3 key takeaways for that time and for the firm's success?
I think our CEO and our management team do a good job with 3 things. Big rocks, and I know people talk about this a lot, and to putting into practice is a challenge. You should, as an executive, you need to make sure that you're focusing on the big things that move you forward. It's not the daily emails that you get every morning or the firefighting. If you're not working on those big things to move your company forward, you're not working on the right things. We make sure that every Monday, our executive team, we have a 30-minute check-in on Monday mornings where you go through what you've moved on your big rock. And everyone has 2 or 3 major components. That for us is absolutely essential. And it's been a huge help being able to have that weekly check-in, certainly through 23. The second, for me, is I'm real passionate about is teamwork and communication. I think with everyone in a hybrid model today, you get on these big Zoom meetings or group meetings. They're great, but I don't think that from the top of the house you get to message correctly on those meetings. I put into writing every week clear communication to all of our team, and our messages around what's our mission, what we're all working on. And we try and celebrate various successes. If it's a team member's birthday, if it's a national holiday, if it's someone had a wedding or a birth or did something great outside of work, celebrate those things, especially in the hybrid models today, so that because people just don't get to know each other. And we were talking about this before, Dave. I think being able to get into an office, build trust together is the best thing about a team. And you can do that in person. It's much harder through hybrid models. I think good communications is massively important. And the last thing, certainly for us, both my partner and I come from sort of a long line of entrepreneurship, setting up other businesses, working in public sector, private sector. I think too many startups today don't set up for long-term success. For us, we're not building a family business that we want to hand down to our kids. We came into this with a plan, with an exit plan, and setting up originally with the right shareholders agreements. Make sure you got one class of shares. For those companies that are starting out with A's and B's and prefs and votings and nons, those types of things. As you move forward, they tend to muddy the waters in the event that you want to do an acquisition or get acquired or go for funding. And finally, audited financials are important. Notice to reader are great, but when you are going to any of the banks for funding or any of the VCs, PE firms, being able to have right from the beginning a set of audited financials and having a good CFO or a good outsourcing partner that knows how to manage that for you goes a long way. For us, everything is IFRS audited, and I will tell you, in year 1, when we looked for a little bit of money to do a transaction, it was a challenge. This round, now that we completed a debt fi, the banks literally lined up to give us money. Spend a little at the upfront, it will save you thousands later on. And for us, I just say for us, it's really the beginning. Integrated medical care, changing the way we treat mental health and physical health has been a passion. It's a passion within everyone within our organization, and we're really excited about the future, and I appreciate the time to talk to y'all.
Yeah, thank you again, Jay. Really appreciate it. Let's open it up. Were there any questions?
Yeah, so yeah, again, feel free to ask any questions you have in the Q&A section. We saved some time at the end to answer those. So the first question that came in, when deciding between NTR and audited financials, what factors played a role in your decision? And then the follow-up to that is, did you have any challenges with VC investors or banks?
Great question. We were originally our year one was NTR, just because that's where we were. It absolutely played a role for us when we were looking for some financing to do our first major transaction, when we bought Get Ahead, we publicized it was a $17 million deal. We needed some cash, and unfortunately, we wanted to go to an equity raise. We ended up doing some high yield debt for a year. That was a problem. We didn't have enough history, and while we were waiting for our audited financials, this year when we did a refi of that debt, having audited financials, literally the banks were lining up. They couldn't give us money fast enough, and that was a massive piece.
Yeah. To be honest, we hear that. I hear that often when I'm talking to CEOs and CFOs of companies, right? Getting audited financials can help with valuation, just making funding easier to get with all of that. So definitely hear you loud and clear on that, Jay, and we see it too from our clients and prospects.